Chapter 1, The Call at 11:07. At 11:07 on a Friday night, the house was quiet in a way that only existed when everything had gone exactly according to plan. The dishwasher hummed. The porch light glowed in its steady, dependable way. Lily Howard stood at the kitchen counter drying her hands on a dish towel while David leaned against the doorway, watching her with a tired but content expression that had taken years to earn. "Don't start something new," she said without looking at him. "You say that every night and then suddenly you're reorganizing tools at midnight." David smiled faintly. "It's not reorganizing. It's optimizing." Lily replied, glancing at him now. "Aha. And tomorrow morning you'll tell me you only got 4 hours of sleep. Worth it for optimal efficiency." She rolled her eyes, but there was no bite in it. "Go sit down. You've been on your feet all day." "Yes, ma'am." He turned, heading toward the living room. The couch had already begun calling his name in a quiet, persuasive voice. He had just lowered himself onto it when the phone rang. Not his phone. Lily's. He didn't move at first. Neither did she. There was something about that hour, something about a phone ringing just past 11 that carried weight. Not emergencies necessarily, but endings, bad decisions, turning points. "Don't like that," David muttered. "Me neither," Lily said. She picked up the phone, glanced at the screen, and her expression didn't change immediately. That was what David noticed. The stillness. The pause that lasted just a fraction longer than normal. "Hello?" she said. David leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He watched her, not the phone. "Yes, this is her mother." Silence on their end. Listening. David's stomach tightened. "Yes, of course. We'll come right away." She ended the call and stood there for a moment, the phone still in her hand. "Lily?" David asked. She looked at him and her voice when she spoke was calm, but thinner than usual, controlled. It was the police department. The hum of the dishwasher suddenly seemed louder. "Meagan," David said. She nodded once. "What happened?" "She's safe," Lily said immediately. "She's not hurt." "That's good," David replied automatically. "That's good." There was a beat. "And?" he asked. Lily took a breath. She and her friend went to a party. There was alcohol. College-age men. Her jaw tightened slightly. "The police shut it down." David stared at her. "Were there?" He stopped himself, then started again more carefully. "Is she hurt?" "No," Lily said firmly. "They said she's fine." "Then what?" "They're charging them," Lily said. "Underage drinking. Drunk in public." David leaned back slowly, his hands moving to his face. He rubbed upward, fingers pressing into his forehead. "Okay," he said after a moment. "Okay. They also found." Lily hesitated. "They found Rohypnol on the premises." That made him sit up straight. "What?" "In vials," she said quietly. "They're adding charges against the men." The officer said it looks like the girls weren't aware. David exhaled slowly, his hands dropping to his knees. "Okay," he said again, but this time the word carried weight. Silence filled the space between them. Then Lily moved. "Get your keys." "I'm driving," David said immediately. "No," Lily replied, already reaching for her purse. "You're not in the right headspace." "I'm fine." "David." There was something in her tone, steady, grounded, that pulled him back. He paused, then nodded. "Okay," he said. The drive to the station was quiet. Not tense. Not yet. Just full. David stared out the passenger window as streetlights slid past in even intervals. His mind tried to build the story piece by piece, but it didn't settle into anything clean. "She's scared," Lily said after a few minutes. "I know." "She's embarrassed." "I know." Lily glanced at him. "You're very calm." He let out a small breath. "I'm trying to be." "That usually means you're not." He gave a faint smile. "You've known me too long." "That's the idea." They pulled into the station parking lot. David sat for a second after the engine cut off. "You want me to handle it?" Lily asked. He shook his head. "No. I'll be there." "But," he looked at her. "But I think she needs you first." Lily studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "All right." Inside, the air was too bright, too sterile. Meagan sat on a hard chair near a desk, her shoulders curled in on themselves. Her eyes were red, her hair slightly tangled, and the moment she saw them, something in her expression cracked. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking. Lily crossed the room in 3 steps and pulled her into a hug. David followed more slowly. He stood just a little off to the side, watching, listening. "She's cooperating," an officer said quietly to David. "No trouble." "Thank you," David replied. When Meagan finally pulled back, her eyes flicked to him. "Dad." He held her gaze. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then shook her head. "Both?" he said gently. A small, shaky laugh escaped her. "Yeah," she whispered. He nodded once. "All right," he said. "We'll figure it out." He didn't say more. Not here. Not yet. As they signed paperwork and gathered the necessary forms, court dates, instructions, explanations, David remained steady, quiet, present. He asked what needed asking. He listened carefully. He nodded when it mattered. Lilly led most of it, and he let her. But underneath the calm, something had shifted. Not panic, not anger, recognition. By the time they stepped back out into the night, the world hadn't changed. The porch light at home would still be on. The dishwasher would still be running. Everything would look exactly the same. But David knew something his daughter didn't yet understand. This wasn't the end of her world. Not even close. And he knew, in a way that settled deep in his chest, that the real conversation, the one that mattered, hadn't even begun yet. Chapter 2: The Kitchen Table Confession. The house had settled into its usual rhythm by Sunday night, but it no longer felt quite as effortless. Routine was still there. The hum of appliances, the familiar creak in the hallway floorboard, the muffled thud of Ryan dropping something in his room. But it all seemed to exist just slightly out of sync, like a song played half a second too late. Dinner had been quieter than usual. Not strained, not tense, just careful. Ryan had asked fewer questions. Lilly had kept conversation moving with practiced ease, steering away from anything sharp or heavy. Meagan had answered when spoken to, her voice softer than normal, her eyes dipping toward her plate more often than not. David had watched all of it, saying just enough to keep things from feeling unusual. He knew better than to force anything. Some things had to come on their own. By the time the house went dark, he found himself at the kitchen table with a book open in front of him. He had been on the same page for at least 10 minutes. The overhead light cast a warm circle across the table, leaving the rest of the room in soft shadow. It was the same quiet he had known the night before, but it carried a different weight now. Footsteps padded down the hallway, soft, hesitant. He didn't look up right away. Dad. He closed the book gently and placed it on the table. Yeah. Meagan stood at the edge of the kitchen, arms loosely wrapped around herself, like she hadn't decided whether she was staying or leaving. Can we talk? David nodded once. Always. She crossed the room slowly and sat across from him, pulling the chair in with a small scrape that sounded louder than it should have. For a moment, neither of them spoke. David leaned back slightly, giving her space. He didn't fill the silence. He'd learned, over the years, that silence was often where the truth lived. Meagan stared at her hands. I don't know where to start, she admitted. That's okay, David said gently. Start anywhere. She let out a small breath that trembled at the edges. I feel stupid, she said. He didn't react outwardly, but he leaned forward just a fraction, attentive. And I feel, she paused, searching, ashamed, and mad at myself, and I don't know how to fix it. David nodded, slow and steady. That's a lot to carry. Yeah. She gave a humorless little laugh. It is. She rubbed her hands together, fidgeting. I keep thinking about it, she continued. Every second, like every choice, every dumb thing I said. Why didn't I just stay? Why didn't I call you? Why didn't I think for 2 seconds? Her voice tightened as the words came faster. I knew it was a bad idea. I knew it, and I went anyway. And now, she stopped, her eyes finally lifting to meet his. Now everyone knows. David tilted his head slightly. Everyone. She shrugged, frustration flickering across her face. It feels like everyone. He considered that for a moment, then nodded. Feels don't always track with facts, he said quietly. But they feel real all the same. She exhaled, some tension leaving her shoulders. I hate that I did this to you, she said. To me. To both of you, she corrected quickly. You had to come get me. From a police station. She shook her head. That's not fair to you. David rested his forearms on the table, folding his hands loosely. Meagan, he said, his voice calm and even. Do you believe your mom and I expect you to be perfect? She hesitated. No, but, he said softly, not unkindly. Just answer that part. She sighed. No. Do you think we've never made mistakes? She gave him a look that was somewhere between disbelief and curiosity. I mean, not like that. That earned the smallest hint of a smile from him. Not like that, he echoed. He studied her for a moment, weighing something quietly in his mind. You think everyone's disappointed in you, he said. She nodded. You think this defines you now. Another nod, more hesitant this time. And you don't know how to move forward. Yeah. He leaned back in his chair, letting out a slow breath. Then, unexpectedly, a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It was subtle but unmistakable. Meagan blinked, caught off guard. What? She asked. He shook his head lightly, rubbing a hand through his hair as a quiet laugh escaped him. You, he said, looking at her, are my daughter. She frowned. Okay? I know you know that, he added quickly, seeing her expression. But that's not what I mean. She crossed her arms, leaning back slightly. Then what do you mean? David's smile softened, but it didn't disappear. It means, he said, I recognize that look. That spiral you're in right now. The way your brain is replaying everything. Rewriting the past like you could undo it if you just thought hard enough. He shook his head. I know that feeling better than you think. She studied him more closely now, curiosity replacing some of the heaviness. You do? Oh yeah, he said. Very well. She leaned forward slightly. Then why are you smiling? He paused. It wasn't hesitation out of doubt. It was deliberation. He tapped his fingers lightly on the table once, twice, then nodded to himself. I'm going to tell you something, he said. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. That sounds serious. It is. He met her gaze directly. And also not at all. That's not reassuring. He chuckled quietly. Fair. She waited, her attention fully focused now. But, he continued, holding up a finger, I'm not going to tell you tonight. Her eyebrows shot up. What? Why not? Because, David said, leaning forward again, his tone calm but certain. If I tell you here, it's just a story. And if you don't? She challenged. If I tell you when we're with my family, he said, you'll understand it. She stared at him, clearly unconvinced. That makes no sense. It will, he said simply. She exhaled sharply, leaning back in her chair again. So I just, wait? 2 days, he said. We're going to your grandparents on Saturday anyway. That's forever, she muttered. It's 48 hours, he corrected. You'll survive. She gave him a look. Barely. He smiled again, a little more openly this time. I promise you, he said, his voice softening. Whatever you think this moment is, it's not the end of anything. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked down at her hands again, but her posture had shifted. Not lighter exactly, but steadier. You really think I'll be okay? She asked quietly. David didn't hesitate. I know you will. She nodded slowly, absorbing that. Another small silence settled between them, but this one felt different. Less heavy, less fragile. Hey, Dad? She said after a moment. Yeah. You're not secretly furious, are you? He considered that honestly. I'm not thrilled with your decision-making, he said. But I'm not furious. Why not? He shrugged lightly. Because you're here. You're safe. And you're learning something. He paused. Those are the parts that matter. She let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in her chest for 2 days. Okay, she said. He nodded toward the hallway. Go get some sleep. She stood, then hesitated. Thanks, she said. Anytime. She started toward her room, then stopped and turned back. Saturday, she said, pointing at him. You better actually tell me. David raised his hands in mock surrender. I will. She narrowed her eyes suspiciously, then gave a small, tired smile before disappearing down the hallway. David sat at the table for a while longer after she left. The house settled again into quiet. He looked at the closed book in front of him, then pushed it aside. 2 days. He could wait 2 days. But as he leaned back in his chair, one thought circled through his mind with quiet certainty. Some lessons couldn't just be explained. They had to be revealed. Chapter 3, The Golf Cart Bandit. Saturday evenings at David's parents' house followed a rhythm that hadn't changed in decades. The driveway filled first, cars angled imperfectly along the edge of the lawn because no one ever quite parked the same way twice. Then came the greetings, loud and overlapping, voices stacking on top of one another until individual conversations blurred into something communal. The front door stayed open longer than it closed. Inside, warmth gathered quickly, not just from the oven or the number of people in a space meant for fewer, but from familiarity. This was where stories lived, where history didn't sit neatly in photo albums but wandered around the house wearing different faces. Meagan stood just inside the entryway, clutching the edge of her sleeve between her fingers. She had been here 1,000 times, but tonight, everything felt sharper. Hey, kiddo, David said softly beside her. She glanced up at him. Are you sure about this? He smiled, calm and unshaken. Absolutely. That doesn't make me feel better. It will, he said. Eventually. She eyed him suspiciously, then exhaled and stepped forward. The moment they crossed fully into the house, the noise hit them. Laughter from the living room, utensils clinking in the kitchen, someone arguing mildly about whether something needed more salt. David, his mother called from somewhere deeper in the house. In here, he answered. Ryan had already disappeared, as if pulled by some magnetic force toward his cousins. Lilly moved ahead with practiced ease, greeting everyone along the way with warm smiles and quick embraces that felt natural and grounded. Meagan stayed close to her father. He didn't rush her. You're good, he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. She nodded, though her grip on her sleeve didn't loosen. Dinner unfolded with the usual chaos. Plates passed in multiple directions, conversations splitting and merging, someone laughing too loudly at something only half the table heard. If anyone noticed Megan's quieter presence, they didn't call attention to it in a way that made her uncomfortable. They simply folded her in. David watched it happen. His older brother clapped him on the shoulder. His younger brother made a joke about traffic that didn't quite land but got a courtesy laugh anyway. His sister leaned across the table at one point to ask Megan if she'd seen a show she liked. Nothing forced. Nothing heavy. Just normal. By the time dessert arrived, a pie whose exact origin no one seemed able to confirm, Megan's shoulders had dropped enough to suggest she was breathing a little easier. David noticed. Of course he did. After dinner, the group migrated into the living room in clusters. Some settled onto couches. Others leaned against walls or perched on the arms of chairs. The conversations loosened, laughter coming a little easier as the structure of the meal faded away. Meagan sat on the edge of a chair, her attention drifting between conversations. Then she looked at her father. He was standing near the back of the room, talking to his younger brother, one hand gesturing mildly as he spoke. She caught his eye. He raised an eyebrow, silently asking, "Now?" She hesitated, then nodded once. He smiled. The movement was so small, so deliberate, that she almost missed it. But then he excused himself from the conversation and crossed the room toward her, weaving easily between people. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Her stomach fluttered uneasily. "No." "Good," he said. "Perfect time." "That's not reassuring either." He leaned down slightly, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "Trust me." She narrowed her eyes. "I do. I just don't know why." He chuckled softly. Then he leaned in closer and whispered a single phrase into her ear. "The Golf Cart Bandit." She blinked. "What?" "Say it," he murmured. Her confusion deepened. "Dad, say it." She glanced around the room, suddenly aware of everyone again. "This is weird," she said under her breath. "Just try." She let out a long breath. Then, feeling vaguely ridiculous, she straightened a little and spoke, loud enough to carry, but not quite confident. "Golf Cart Bandit?" The effect was immediate, like someone had flipped a switch. For 3 full seconds, the room went completely still. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Laughter died in place. Every head turned, not toward her exactly, but toward something shared, remembered. And then, "Oh no!" Someone laughed. "Did she just—" "It's happening!" Another voice declared. Before Meagan could even process what was happening, people were standing. Chairs shifted. Arms draped over shoulders with practiced familiarity. And then, as if rehearsed across years of repetition, the room erupted. He's the Golf Cart Bandit, king of the night, riding 12 miles an hour in a blinking blue light, sirens behind but they're laughing apart. It's the slowest big chase ever starring his cart. The song rolled through the room with joyful absurdity. Voices overlapped, harmonies colliding with laughter halfway through lines. Someone clapped offbeat. Someone else exaggerated the words dramatically. Meagan sat frozen, stunned. And then, slowly, something cracked. Not in a painful way, in a disbelieving, almost disoriented way. She looked at her father. David stood among them, smiling. Not embarrassed, not defensive, just completely at home in it. When the last line echoed off the walls, the room burst into laughter. Real laughter, full-bodied and unrestrained. Meagan blinked. What just happened? Her aunt wiped a tear from her eye. "Oh, honey, you just discovered family history. Legend." One of her uncles corrected proudly. David raised a hand. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." "Stole a vehicle," his older brother chimed in. "Borrowed," David said calmly. "Stole," both brothers said in unison. Meagan looked between them, incredulous. "Wait, what?" Her younger uncle leaned forward, clearly delighted. "Your father, at approximately your age, decided one evening that walking was inefficient." David sighed. "That's not how I would phrase it." "And instead," his brother continued, ignoring him completely, "he took a golf cart." "I returned it," David interjected. 2 hours later," came the reply. The room laughed again. Meagan stared at her father. 2 hours. David rubbed the back of his neck, smiling reluctantly now. "It became a situation." "That's one way to say it," his sister offered. "What happened?" Meagan demanded, leaning forward despite herself. David hesitated only briefly, just long enough to acknowledge the moment, then settled into it. "I made a bad decision," he said. "Thought it would be funny. Started driving it down the county road. At top speed," his brother added. 12 miles an hour, David clarified. "Reckless," someone muttered. Meagan let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Did you get arrested?" David shook his head. "No." "Oh, they tried," his older brother said. "But here's the thing, no one was in a hurry." That earned another ripple of laughter. "The police followed him," his sister added, "because they genuinely had nothing better to do. For 2 hours," someone emphasized. "They recorded it," another voice chimed in. "I think there's still footage somewhere." "No," David said quickly. "There is not." "There absolutely is," his brother replied with certainty. Meagan covered her mouth, half laughing now, half astonished. "So you just drove around town?" David nodded. "Until the battery died. And then?" she asked. "I got out," he said, "and accepted my life choices." "That's when it got less fun," his sister added. "What happened after that?" Meagan asked. David leaned forward slightly, his tone shifting. Not heavy, but grounded. "The judge didn't laugh," he said. "Not even a little." The room quieted just a fraction. "I had to work at the golf course," he continued. 6 months. Maintenance. Charging carts, his brother said with a grin. Cleaning them, David corrected. Fixing them. Being responsible for the very thing I didn't respect. Meagan studied him. And? She asked softly. And it taught me something, he said simply. She held his gaze. What? He smiled. Not the amused smile from earlier, but something steadier, deeper. That making a mistake doesn't define you, he said. Repeating it does. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then, gently, Lilly spoke from where she sat nearby. He told me that story on our 3rd date, she said, her tone warm. I almost didn't believe him. Meagan glanced at her mother. You stayed. Lilly smiled. I decided he was worth the story. David looked at her. Something soft and familiar passing between them. Meagan saw it. Really saw it. And for the first time since Friday night, the tightness in her chest loosened completely. I thought, she started, then stopped. David waited. I thought everything was ruined, she admitted. He shook his head gently. No. She let out a slow breath. No, she repeated quietly. Around them, conversation slowly picked up again. Laughter returned, this time blending seamlessly with everything else. But Meagan sat there for a moment longer, letting the realization settle. Her father wasn't perfect. He never had been. And somehow that made everything feel possible again. Chapter 4: The Courtroom Waltz. The courthouse did not look like a place where life-changing moments occurred. That was the first thing David noticed as he and Lilly guided Meagan through the front doors on Monday morning. It looked ordinary. Fluorescent lighting buzzed faintly overhead. The walls were a shade of beige that had likely been selected to avoid offending anyone and ended up inspiring no one. People moved through the space with quiet purpose. Some anxious, some tired, some simply waiting for their turn to be done with whatever had brought them there. This is it, Meagan muttered under her breath. What were you expecting? Ryan asked, tagging along unexpectedly cheerful about the entire situation. Columns? Dramatic music. Lilly shot him a look. You are here to support your sister, not narrate a documentary. I am supporting, he said defensively. Emotionally, through commentary. David reached back and gave Ryan's shoulder a light squeeze. Dial it back a notch. Ryan made a zipping motion across his lips. Thank you, Lilly said dryly. Meagan stood between her parents, her hands stuffed into the pockets of her jacket. She wasn't fidgeting the way she had Saturday, but there was still a tightness in her posture that hadn't quite eased. You okay? David asked quietly. She nodded. I think so. That's enough, he said. They checked in at the front desk, signed where they were told to sign, and followed directions toward a waiting area outside a small courtroom. There were other families there. That was the second thing Meagan noticed. It wasn't just her. A boy about her age sat a few chairs down, staring at his shoes while his mother whispered sharply to him. Another girl leaned against a wall, arms crossed, while her father kept glancing at his watch as if impatience might somehow speed things up. The realization settled in slowly. This wasn't a spotlight. It was a rotation. See, David murmured, following her gaze. You're not alone in this. That doesn't make it better, she said quietly. No, he agreed. But it makes it clearer. She frowned. Clearer how? That this, he said, gesturing lightly to the room, isn't about who you are as a person. It's about what happened, and what happens next. She nodded slowly, considering that. Lilly sat down, motioning for Meagan to sit beside her. When we go in, you answer clearly, you listen carefully, and you don't rush, she said. There's no trick here. Meagan swallowed. Okay. And, Lilly added softer now, we're right there. Megan's shoulders dropped a fraction. Okay. David remained standing, pacing a small, contained line in front of their chairs. Not anxious, just moving. You're going to wear a groove in the floor, Lilly said without looking up. I'm mapping the terrain, he replied. Ryan leaned forward. It's a straight line, Dad. Strategically optimal, David said. Ryan looked impressed. I respect the commitment. Meagan huffed a small laugh before she could stop herself. All three of them turned to look at her. What? She said, caught. Nothing, David said, but he was smiling. Her name was called 15 minutes later. The courtroom itself was smaller than she expected. No sweeping benches, no echoing grandeur. Just a judge at the front, a clerk, a few rows of seating, and a structure that felt less like a stage and more like a system. They stood together as they were guided into place. David stood just behind and slightly to the side of Lilly and Meagan, his presence close enough to be felt without crowding. The proceedings began. Names, confirmations, charges stated plainly without drama. Underage consumption of alcohol, public intoxication. Hearing it spoken out loud made Megan's stomach twist again. She kept her focus forward. Do you understand the charges against you? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The judge studied her briefly, not harshly, not kindly, just thoroughly. Then the explanation came. Of course, educational, mandatory, probation, monitored, defined, consequences but measured ones. These conditions are not designed to punish you beyond reason, the judge said. They are designed to ensure you do not find yourself in this position again. Meagan nodded. Yes, Your Honor. You were fortunate, the judge continued, her tone sharpening slightly, that law enforcement intervened when they did. Situations like the one described can escalate in ways that do not end in courtrooms. A flicker passed through Lily's expression. Something fierce, protective. David saw it. He reached forward just enough to rest his hand lightly at the small of her back. She didn't look at him, but she leaned into the contact just slightly. I understand, Meagan said. I expect that you do, the judge replied. And I expect that you will show that understanding in your actions moving forward. Yes, Your Honor. The gavel came down, not dramatically, just definitively. And just like that, it was done. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter exactly, but more breathable. That's it, Ryan asked, looking around. No closing arguments? No surprise witnesses? Lilly gave him a look. You've watched too many shows. I'm just saying the pacing felt off. David chuckled. Real life rarely follows a script. Ryan frowned. Missed opportunity. Meagan stood still for a moment, processing. That wasn't what I expected, she said finally. What did you expect? David asked. I don't know, she admitted. Something worse. Lilly turned to her. Sometimes the worst part is everything leading up to it. Meagan let that settle. Am I in trouble? She asked, the question more emotional than legal now. Lilly folded her arms, considering. You made a serious mistake, she said. And there are consequences for that. Meagan nodded. But, Lilly continued, her voice softening, you owned it, you faced it, and now you deal with it. Meagan glanced at David. He tilted his head slightly. Feels different than Friday night, doesn't it? A lot, she admitted. He nodded once. Good. They started walking toward the car. Halfway there, Ryan spoke again. So, probation, he said, clearly intrigued. What does that actually mean here? Like, are there rules? Curfews? Electronic ankle monitors? No, Lilly said firmly. Just checking. David opened the car door for Meagan. She paused before getting in. Hey, Dad. Yeah. She hesitated, then smiled a little. Your judge didn't make you do a class, did they? He considered that. No, he said. I got the deluxe experience instead. She laughed, shaking her head as she climbed into the car. As David closed the door, Lilly looked at him across the roof. You handled that well, she said. So did you. They stood there for a second, the noise of the parking lot humming around them. This is the part where we stay consistent, she said quietly. I know. No backtracking. No softening because it's uncomfortable. He nodded. We walk it all the way through. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then smiled faintly. We always do. He returned the smile, steady, certain. Yeah, he said. We do. And for the first time since that call on Friday night, the path forward didn't feel uncertain. Felt defined. Not easy, but clear. Chapter 5, Probation and Perspective. The first Monday after court did not announce itself as significant. It didn't arrive with weight or ceremony. It came like any other Monday, quiet alarm clocks, rushed breakfasts, mismatched socks discovered too late to fix, and the subtle hum of a household sliding into its weekly rhythm. But for Meagan, everything felt slightly recalibrated. Not heavier. Not exactly. Just different. Don't forget, Lilly called from the kitchen as Meagan grabbed her bag. Your course starts Wednesday at 4. I know, Meagan replied, not quite sharply, but with enough edge to signal she didn't need reminding. Lilly didn't bristle. She simply nodded. Good. David stood near the doorway, tying his shoes. You need a ride afterward? He asked Meagan casually. I can walk, she said. It's across town. She hesitated. Then yeah, a ride would be good. I'll pick you up, he said. Ryan appeared behind them, chewing on a piece of toast. Is this the class where they tell you all the dumb things people did and expect you to feel smarter by comparison? Ryan, Lilly said evenly. What? I'm asking academically. It's not entertainment, Lilly said. Ryan swallowed. I mean, it probably is a little. David stood, slipping on his jacket. It teaches you how fast situations can go wrong, he said, and how to not be in those situations again. Ryan nodded, thoughtful. So, educational and mildly terrifying. Exactly, David replied. Meagan rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth lifted anyway. I'll see you after school, David said to her, opening the door. Yeah, she replied. He paused, then added, You've got this. She nodded. I know. And this time she almost believed it. The house adjusted in small, almost invisible ways over the next few days. Lilly was consistent, not stricter in tone, but in presence. Expectations were clearer. Curfew times were firm. Questions were direct. How was school? What did you work on today? What's your plan for homework? Nothing accusatory. Nothing excessive. Just steady. David noticed the rhythm Lilly set, and he matched it without needing discussion. Hey, he said Tuesday evening, appearing in Megan's doorway. Walk with me. She looked up from her bed. Where? Just around the block. She hesitated, then set her phone aside. Okay. The neighborhood was quiet, the late afternoon sun stretching shadows across the sidewalks. It was the kind of calm that didn't demand anything from anyone. They walked side by side for a while without speaking. It wasn't uncomfortable. It rarely was with him. People talk, Meagan said suddenly. David didn't react immediately. Yeah, he said after a moment. They do. I heard a couple girls today, she continued. Not even about me directly. Just about that party. He nodded. That's how it starts. It felt like they knew, she said. Did they? I don't know. She exhaled. It doesn't matter. Feels like it. David glanced at her. That feeling fades. How long? He considered that. Depends on how much power you give it. She kicked a small rock along the sidewalk. That's not very specific. He smiled faintly. Most real answers aren't. She nudged the rock again. So I just pretend I don't care? No, he said. You actually don't care. She snorted. That sounds incredibly hard. It is, he said. At first. They walked another few steps. Here's the thing, he continued. Right now, this feels like the biggest thing that's ever happened to you. It is, she said. He nodded. That tracks. But the world doesn't organize itself around individual moments, not even big ones. She frowned slightly. So it just moves on? Exactly. That feels unfair. It's also what saves you, he said. She was quiet for a moment after that. I hate that I put you guys through this, she admitted. David stopped walking. She took a step before realizing, then turned back toward him. I know, she added quickly. You said not to think like that, but... He shook his head gently. No, I get that part. It means you care. He gestured lightly around them. But this, he said, this isn't suffering. This is parenting. She blinked. That's not how I imagined this going. He smiled. You thought we'd be what? Mad forever? Disappointed every time we look at you? She shrugged. Something like that. Meagan, he said, his tone steady. You made a mistake. You didn't become one. She looked at him, really looked this time. The thought settled deeper than the words alone. Okay, she said quietly. He nodded once, as if that was all that needed to be said. Come on, he added, starting to walk again. Your mom probably already thinks we fell into a ditch somewhere. She'd call, Meagan said. She absolutely would, he agreed. Wednesday came faster than Meagan expected. The course was held in a low building near the edge of town, functional, unremarkable, designed for purpose rather than comfort. David dropped her off a few minutes early. You want me to wait? He asked. She shook her head. No, I'll be fine. He looked at her for a second, assessing. Not her words, but her posture, her tone. Then he nodded. I'll be right here at 6. Okay. She stepped out of the car and paused before closing the door. Hey, Dad. Yeah. Thanks. For not making this worse. He gave her a small, sincere smile. Not my job. She nodded, then shut the door. Inside, the room smelled faintly of coffee and dry erase markers. Several other teens sat scattered across chairs, some avoiding eye contact, others pretending not to notice anyone else. The instructor didn't waste time. This class, she said, is not about shaming you. If you're here, something already happened. This is about making sure you understand what almost happened, and what could have. Meagan listened, really listened. There were stories. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just real. Situations that escalated faster than expected. Decisions that seemed small at the time but carried weight later. By the end of the first hour, her original embarrassment had shifted. Not disappeared, but reframed. When David pulled up at 6, she got into the car without speaking right away. He didn't push. They drove for a few minutes in comfortable quiet before she finally spoke. I didn't know, she said. About how fast things can go wrong, she said. He nodded. Most people don't, until they do. She looked out the window. I got lucky, she said. You did, he agreed. She turned back to him. I'm not going to make that mistake again. David glanced at her, then back at the road. That, he said, is the whole point. At home, Lilly was waiting in the kitchen. How was it? She asked. Meagan set her bag down. It was good, she said. Not fun, but good. Lilly studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. That sounds about right. Ryan leaned around the corner. Did anyone cry? Yes, Meagan said flatly. He nodded. Strong start. Go do your homework, Lilly said. He disappeared just as quickly. Meagan leaned against the counter, letting out a breath. I think I get it now, she said. David and Lilly exchanged a glance. Not triumphant, not relieved. Just recognizing. Good, Lilly said. And for the first time since everything had started, the house didn't feel slightly off. Felt aligned again. Not perfect, but stronger for it. Chapter 6, The Marriage in the Margins. By Thursday evening, The rhythm of the house had settled into something familiar again, but not identical to what it had been before. It was quieter in places where it used to be faster. More deliberate in ways that felt intentional instead of strained. Change, David thought, didn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it slipped in sideways and made itself known only after everything else adjusted around it. "Ryan's shoes," Lilly called from the kitchen. "They're on," Ryan replied. "They're not tied. They're emotionally tied." "Ryan." There was a short pause, followed by the unmistakable sound of exaggerated sighing and the shuffle of feet. "They're tied," he called a moment later. "Thank you," Lilly said. David leaned against the doorway, watching her as she finished wiping down the counter. "You missed your calling," he said. "As what?" she asked, not looking up. "General." She let out a small laugh. "You think I'd have the patience for that?" "You have the patience for this," he said, gesturing lightly toward the house. "That's different," she replied. "How?" "I chose this," she said simply. That made him smile. "You chose very strategically," he said. "Oh, absolutely," she replied. "Careful planning. Extensive vetting. Rigorous interviews? Multiple rounds," she said, finally glancing at him. "You barely made it past the second." He pressed a hand to his chest. "Devastating." She shook her head, but the smile lingered. For a moment, they just looked at each other across the kitchen. No urgency, no distraction. It had been a while since they'd stood still like that without something pulling them in different directions. "You're quiet tonight," Lilly said. "I'm observing," David replied. "That sounds suspicious." "I'm allowed to notice my own house," he said. "That depends," she said. "What have you noticed?" He took a few steps into the kitchen, leaning his hip against the counter near her. "That you handled all of this really well," he said. She didn't deflect, didn't brush it off. She just let it sit there for a second before nodding. "So did you," she said. He tilted his head. "I mostly stayed out of your way." "Exactly," she said. "Very helpful." He laughed under his breath. "Team effort," he said. "Always," she agreed. The word carried weight, not heavy, but grounded in repetition and proof. They had said it before. They had lived it more times than they could count. From sleepless nights with babies to school projects that stretched far past reasonable hours, to quiet conversations about money, about time, about everything that came with building a life together. It had always been a team effort. Even when it wasn't easy. Especially when it wasn't easy. "You remember when Ryan tried to convince us he didn't have homework for 2 weeks straight?" David said. Lilly raised an eyebrow. He presented a very confident argument. He cited multiple sources. "All of them incorrect," she said. "But convincing." She shook her head. "He almost had you. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. You like to believe your children are more organized than they are." "That too," he admitted. They both smiled. The sound of a door closing down the hall told them Meagan was home from her second course session. Footsteps followed, slower than Ryan's, more measured. "She's doing okay," Lilly said quietly. David nodded. "Yeah." There was no question about who they were talking about. "She's thinking more," Lilly added. "She always does," David said. "Now she's just seeing the whole picture." Lilly leaned back against the counter, arms loosely folded. "I was worried," she admitted. "I know. Not just about that night," she clarified. "About how she'd carry it." David nodded. "How do you think she's doing with that?" he asked. Lilly considered it. "I think," she said slowly, "she's learning that mistakes don't erase everything else." David smiled faintly. "That's a good lesson." "It's a necessary one," Lilly said. Their conversation paused again, not awkward, just complete for the moment. Ryan barreled into the kitchen a few seconds later, grabbing a glass and filling it with water like it was an emergency. "I'm starving," he announced. "You just ate," Lilly said. "That was earlier," he replied. "It was an hour ago." "Time moves differently for me," Ryan said solemnly. David leaned toward Lilly. "We should study that." "Extensively," she agreed. Ryan squinted at them. "I feel like I'm being mocked." "Gently," David said. Supportively, Lilly added. Ryan said, unconvinced, before grabbing a snack and disappearing again. The kitchen settled once more. "Remember when we thought 2 kids would feel calmer eventually?" David said. Lilly gave him a look. "I still think that was a reasonable assumption." "Based on what?" "Optimism," she said. "Ah," he nodded. "Classic mistake." She nudged him lightly with her shoulder. They stood there again, close but not crowded. Comfortable. Familiar. "Hey," David said after a moment. "Yeah. We should go out." Lilly blinked, slightly surprised. "Out?" "Yeah. Dinner. Somewhere that doesn't involve anyone asking for seconds or negotiating bedtime." She tilted her head. "Are you asking me on a date?" "I think I am." She studied him, considering, not skeptically, just thoughtfully. "When?" she asked. "Soon," he said. "Before something else tries to take priority." "Something always does," she replied. "I know," he said. "That's why we don't wait for it to stop." That landed. She let out a small breath, then nodded once. Okay, she said. Okay? He echoed. Okay? She repeated, a hint of a smile forming. But you have to plan it. He straightened slightly. I can do that. I don't want efficient, she warned. I want thoughtful. I contain multitudes, he said. She laughed softly. We'll see. They moved around each other naturally as they cleaned up the last remnants of the evening. Passing dishes, wiping counters, turning off lights. Small movements. Small coordination. Years of practice made it effortless. As the house dimmed and the night settled in again, David found himself pausing in the doorway of the kitchen. Lilly noticed. What? She asked. Nothing, he said after a moment. She crossed her arms. That's never true. He smiled, softer now. He gestured vaguely behind him. All of it. Still works. Lilly followed his glance. The hallway, the quiet rooms, the subtle signs of life everywhere. Of course it does, she said. He looked back at her. We worked for that. She nodded. We still are. There was no grand moment. No sweeping declaration. Just two people standing in a kitchen they had built a life inside of, recognizing what they had and choosing it again. Don't overthink it, Lilly said gently. Too late, he replied. She smiled, stepping closer just enough to rest her hand briefly against his arm. Then at least don't mess up the date, she said. No pressure, he said. None at all. And just like that, the moment shifted back into motion, light, familiar, alive. The kids were still learning. The family was still adjusting. Life was still moving forward at its usual pace, but tucked quietly in the margins, where it didn't demand attention but held everything together anyway. Their marriage held steady. Not perfect, but chosen. Every single day. Chapter 7, the second lesson. By the second week of probation, the novelty had worn off. Not that any of it had felt particularly novel to begin with, but the structure, the reminders, the awareness that things were different had settled into something more normal, which Meagan was beginning to understand didn't necessarily mean easier. School was where it showed the most, not in loud, dramatic ways. No one cornered her in hallways or made a spectacle of things. It was subtler than that. Glances that lingered a fraction too long, conversations that dipped when she walked by, the quiet recalibration of where she fit in the invisible social map. It wasn't constant, but it was enough. She pushed open the front door that Thursday afternoon and dropped her bag by the wall a little harder than necessary. I'm home, she called. In the kitchen, Lilly answered. Meagan walked in, grabbing a glass and filling it with water before leaning back against the counter. How was school? Lilly asked, not looking up from slicing vegetables. Fine. Lilly paused for half a second, then resumed. Okay. That was it. No follow-up questions. No pressure. Just space. Meagan stood there, waiting for something more. When it didn't come, she let out a small breath, almost frustrated by how easily Lilly let it go. People are weird, she said suddenly. Lilly set the knife down and turned to face her. They can be, she said calmly. What happened? Meagan shrugged, staring into her glass. Nothing big, she said. Just different. Different how? Like people don't know what to do with me now, she said. Some act like nothing happened. Some act like something did. And I don't know which one's worse. Lilly nodded slowly. Both are uncomfortable in their own way. Yeah, Meagan muttered. It's like I'm either invisible or not. She set the glass down a little more firmly than necessary. I just wanted to go back to normal, she said. Lilly crossed her arms lightly. It will. When? There was that question again. The one without a clean answer. Sooner than you think, Lilly said. Longer than you want. Meagan let out a humorless laugh. That's not helpful. It's honest, Lilly replied. They held each other's gaze for a moment. And in the meantime? Meagan asked. In the meantime, Lilly said. You decide who you are regardless of what they think. Meagan frowned. That sounds like something you say when there's no actual solution. It's exactly that, Lilly said without hesitation. Because there isn't one that controls other people. Meagan absorbed that, not entirely satisfied. I don't like it, she admitted. You don't have to, Lilly said. You just have to get through it. Meagan sighed, running a hand through her hair. Dad says it'll fade, she said. He's right. Eventually, Meagan muttered. Eventually, Lilly agreed. They let the conversation rest there. Not finished but paused. A few minutes later, David walked in, setting his keys down. Hey, he said. What did I miss? Philosophy hour, Lilly replied. Ah, he nodded. Heavy topics or light ones? Depends on your definition, she said. Meagan glanced at him. He picked up on it immediately. Walk? He asked. She hesitated for half a second, then nodded. Yeah. The air outside was cooler than it had been earlier in the week, the sky stretching wide and clear above them. They fell into step easily. Mom gave you the control what you can talk? David asked. She always does, Meagan said. She's good at it. She's also frustratingly right, Meagan admitted. David smiled faintly. That checks out. They walked a few steps in silence. Someone said something today, Meagan said. Do you want to tell me what? She shrugged. It wasn't even direct. Just, that party was insane. And then this look. She shook her head. Like they were waiting to see if I'd react. Did you? No, she said. I just walked past. He nodded. That was probably the right move. It didn't feel like it, she said. It rarely does, he replied. She kicked at a crack in the pavement. I wanted to say something, she admitted. Like explain. Or argue. Or just make it stop being this weird thing. David stopped walking. She turned to face him. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone, he said. I know, but, and, he added gently, you're not going to make it stop being a thing by reacting to every version of it. She crossed her arms. So I just ignore it forever? No, he said. You outlast it. She frowned. That sounds like a waiting game. It is, he said. But it's also a consistency game. She blinked. What does that mean? It means, he continued, people build impressions over time. You don't change that with one reaction. You change it by being steady long enough that the old story gets replaced. She looked at him, skepticism flickering. That takes forever. It takes time, he corrected. Not forever. She shifted her weight, still unconvinced. What if people don't let it go? She asked. Some won't, he said plainly. She blinked. That's not comforting. I didn't say it would be, he replied. But you don't need everyone to let it go. Just most of them? He shook his head. Not even that. Just enough that it stops mattering. She let that sit. That's a different way of thinking about it, she admitted. Yeah, he said. It takes practice. They started walking again. After a few steps, she spoke again. Quieter this time. I don't like how this feels, she said. I know. And I don't want to mess up again. That's good, he said. She frowned. It doesn't feel good. It's not supposed to, he replied. If it felt easy, it wouldn't stick. They walked another stretch of sidewalk in silence. Hey, Dad. Yeah. Did anyone treat you differently after the golf cart thing? She asked. He chuckled softly. Oh, absolutely. Her eyes widened slightly. Seriously. Yeah, he said. Some people thought it was hilarious. Some thought I was an idiot. Most just moved on faster than I expected. What about you? She asked. How did you deal with it? He thought about it for a moment. Poorly at first, he admitted. I leaned into the funny parts because that was easier than sitting with the rest of it. That sounds like you, she said. Yeah, he agreed. But eventually it evened out. I did what I was supposed to do, kept moving forward. And it stopped being a thing? It turned into a story, he said. Which is very different. She smiled a little at that. I like the story version better, she said. Everyone does, he replied. They reached the corner and turned back toward home. You'll get there, he added. I know, she said. Then, after a beat, I just wish it was faster. Quick fixes don't usually last, he said. She sighed. You and Mom are very consistent. We coordinate, he said. I've noticed. He glanced down at her. You doing okay? He asked. She paused, considering. Yeah, she said finally. I am. He nodded. Good. When they got back home, the kitchen lights glowed warm through the windows, and the faint sound of Ryan arguing with himself about homework drifted faintly through the walls. It looked exactly the same as it always had. But Meagan didn't feel the same as she had when she'd walked out earlier. Not completely different, just steadier. As they stepped inside, Lilly looked up from the stove. Better? She asked. Meagan nodded. Better, she said. And this time it felt like progress. Chapter 8, 12 miles an hour forward. The date was not elaborate. Lilly knew that the moment David told her the plan. Simple dinner, a place not too far but far enough that it required intention. No reservations weeks in advance. No grand gesture designed to prove anything. And yet, she found herself standing in front of the mirror a little longer than usual. You're overthinking this, she muttered to her reflection. She does that sometimes, David said from the doorway. She turned, eyebrow raised. How long have you been standing there? Long enough to determine you're doing exactly what you told me not to. She smiled faintly. And what's that? Turning something simple into something significant. She considered that. Maybe it is significant, she said. His expression softened, just slightly. Yeah, he said. It is. There was no rush as they gathered their things. No scrambling to get out the door. Ryan had been given a list of instructions so detailed that he saluted halfway through receiving them. Meagan, seated at the kitchen counter, watched the exchange with quiet amusement. You know, she said as they paused by the door, you could just say don't burn the house down and cover most of that. I prefer specificity, Lilly replied. Ryan raised a hand. For the record, I had no intention of burning anything. Good, David said. Let's keep it that way. Meagan smiled as they stepped outside. Have fun, she called after them. Lilly glanced back, just for a moment. There was something different in Megan's posture. More relaxed, more grounded. Not entirely free of the past few weeks, but not defined by it either. Progress. Lock the door, Lilly called. Already done, Ryan answered. David gestured toward the car. Shall we? We shall, Lilly said. The restaurant was warm in a quiet, understated way. Soft lighting, low conversation, no sense of urgency. David pulled out Lily's chair before sitting across from her. Well, she said, settling in. This is already better than eating something that was negotiated into existence. He smiled. I aimed high. They sat for a moment without speaking. The kind of silence that wasn't empty but full of familiarity, of shared understanding, of years of knowing how to sit across from each other without needing immediate words. So, Lilly said finally, resting her hands lightly on the table. How did I do this week? David tilted his head slightly. You want the honest answer? I always do. He considered his words carefully, not because he was afraid of saying the wrong thing, but because he respected the moment enough to choose the right ones. You were steady, he said. Clear. Calm without being distant. She listened, attentive. You gave her space, he continued, but you didn't leave her alone in it. Lilly exhaled softly, something easing in her shoulders. Good, she said. You always do that, David added. Do what? Find the line, he said, between too much and not enough. She smiled faintly. It doesn't always feel like that from my side. I know, he said, but it shows. She studied him for a second. You handled her differently, she said. How so? You didn't push her to talk, Lilly said. You waited. David leaned back slightly. She talks more when she doesn't feel like she has to. That's true, Lilly admitted. They paused as the server approached, placing menus before them. Can I get you something to drink? The server asked. Water's fine for now, Lilly said. Same, David added. When the server stepped away, Lilly looked at him again. She trusts you, she said. David frowned slightly. She trusts both of us. She does, Lilly agreed. But with you, she tests things out first. He thought about that. Yeah, he said after a moment. I can see that. That's important, Lilly said. It is, he agreed. Another pause settled between them, but this one felt lighter somehow, as if something had been acknowledged and set gently in place. You know what I realized today? Lilly said. What's that? We don't get ahead of things like this, she said. We meet them. David nodded slowly. That's always been the way, he said. She smiled. Even when we didn't know what we were doing. We still don't, he said. We just look more convincing now. He laughed under his breath. That's fair. Their drinks arrived, and they took a moment to look over the menu, though neither seemed particularly focused on it. So, Lilly said, glancing up again. What's next? For dinner? He asked. She gave him a look. For everything. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he considered the question in full not as something to resolve in a single sentence but as something to respect. Next, he said slowly. We keep doing what we've been doing. That's very reassuringly vague, she said. It's also very accurate, he replied. She smiled, conceding the point. We stay consistent, he continued. We let her work through it. We don't overreact to every bump in the road. And when there are bumps? She asked. He met her gaze, steady. We handle them, he said. Together. That word again. Together. It didn't need emphasis. Carried its own. Lilly reached across the table, her hand settling lightly over his. Good, she said. Across town, in a house that felt like it had rediscovered its balance, Meagan sat on the back steps, her phone resting beside her. Ryan hovered in the doorway, watching her. You're being quiet, he said. I'm thinking, she replied. That's suspicious, he said. She smiled a little. Go away. I'm just saying, he continued, stepping outside. This many deep thoughts usually leads to you deciding something. She glanced at him. Maybe I already did. He tilted his head. About what? She looked out into the yard, the evening stretching softly around her. About not letting this be a thing forever, she said. Ryan blinked. That sounds healthy. I know, she said. It's weird. He nodded solemnly. I support you from a safe distance. She laughed quietly, leaning back against the step. They'll fade, she said, more to herself than to him. Who? Ryan asked. The people, she replied. The conversations. All of it. He shrugged. Probably. People get bored. That's what Dad said, she said. Dad says a lot of things, Ryan replied. Sometimes they're right. He grinned. Don't tell him that. He'll get confident. She rolled her eyes, but her smile stayed. Inside, the house waited, not empty, not static, just present. Later that night, when David and Lilly returned, the lights were still on. The door was locked. Nothing had burned down. Successful evening, David said as they stepped inside. On all fronts, Lilly agreed. Meagan appeared in the hallway. Hey, she said. Hey, David replied. Everything okay? Yeah, she said. Everything's good. Lilly studied her for a second, then smiled. Good, she said. There was no dramatic moment, no declaration, just a quiet understanding settling into place. Life hadn't returned to what it was. It had moved forward. And as David turned off the kitchen light and glanced once more at the house around him, the family moving easily within it, the small moments stacking into something larger, he felt something settle deep in his chest. Not relief, not even resolution, something steadier than that. They weren't perfect. They never had been. But they were moving forward, together, at about 12 miles an hour. And it was exactly the right speed.